Martin, this is a big game for both teams. Again, both teams are fighting for their playoff lives. The Lions, it's been a weird season for them where if you just they've played well at times and you thought, okay, this is who they are. But then they've had a couple of games they shouldn't have lost. Most notably, in my opinion, that Vikings game, they shouldn't have lost that one a handful of weeks ago. Now they find themselves 7-5 on the outside looking in. You got the Cowboys at 6-5-1. Remember that tie with the Packers, but they've been playing really well as of late, especially the offense and the players they acquired in that trade have been producing thus far. Quentin Williams being one an example of that. So big game tonight. Kickoff about 5:15. We'll watch it and keep you updated. But one of the bigger conversations, a couple of ways going about this game, Martin. I will start here. Is Dak Prescott and how he's kind of been reminding folks that without the playoff success, if we were just to simply look at regular seasons, Dak Prescott has been a really good quarterback, right? Dak Prescott's put up stats. Dak Prescott had, prior to last season, when he was hurt, CD was hurt early, a bunch of defensive players were hurt. They had 3 seasons of 12-5, which does lead to the criticism of, well, why don't you guys ball out in the playoffs? You've been 12-5. The expectations are high. A couple of seasons back, Dak is an MVP candidate. So he's been doing this, and I think that's why sometimes people can be critical of him, is because you want more. The expectations are high. But now you look at this season, and a lot of conversations, of course, are, is he MVP candidate? Look at him, 69% completion percentage. You got 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, rating of 102.4. So he's balling out. And to me, Martin, I think, unfortunately, for any star athlete on a team in any sport, sans for maybe baseball, it is ultimately going to come down to that win-loss, and it's going to come down to the team play. And I say that to say because it reminds me of he's playing great. He's balling out. But am I not looking at the same season I was looking at last year and maybe lesser than Joe Burrow? Ain't this the same, where Joe Burrow was balling out of control, but we were sitting here saying, man, but look at the team. Oh, man, look at the team. They're not winning enough. They only got this. Or look at they're barely 500. And almost 71% completion percentage. Almost 5,000 yards for Joe Burrow. 43 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and a rating of 108.5. So to me, while Dak has looked very impressive, the team's been good and fun to watch. I mean, he's not even on the pace of what Joe Burrow was. And again, it's going to come down to how they finish. And I mean, it can't be, they're 6-5-1. So they can't end this season like, 9, what would that be? 9-7-1 or something like that.
9-6-9,
9-7-1. Yeah. It can't be that to me, because then that to me, I go look back at Joe Burrow. Had an even better year. And what they finished? Was it 8-9, 9-8?
No, I got you.
So that
the only way for Dak Prescott to win the MVP is for the Cowboys from this point on to the end of the season to not lose another game.
100%.
Because the only way for Dak Prescott to win the MVP is they have to make the playoffs. And at this point, the outcome of I think tonight is the first playoff game of the year. Whoever loses this
for both
game,
teams, I agree.
You can no longer talk about them as viable playoff contenders. So that Dak MVP dream might die 4 quarters from today, right? For 4 quarters from right now. Now, if in fact the Cowboys go on a streak, continue their streak, I should say. They've had the best 3 games and probably the best 2-3 game stretch that we've seen of any team in the NFL, just in terms of what they've put on tape in this last 3 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Like for a 3-week period, obviously not throughout the whole season. I thought it was laughable that the Cowboys' win total was so low because Dak Prescott has been a guy when he has been healthy. Right now, I believe outside of his rookie, even his rookie, outside of his second year, he's double-digit wins. If he's healthy, he's going to get you double-digit wins. So I thought a lot of that was overblown. I think this team would be better with Michael Parsons on it, obviously.
But do all that for us. We appreciate
George Pickens coming over to Dallas. You saw I saw a report yesterday out of The Athletic. Everybody from Pittsburgh is speculating. All the unnamed sources from Pittsburgh speculate. Yep. The reason why George Pickens is doing well in Dallas right now is because there's no quarterback. There's quarterback stability. There's no quarterback question marks. There's no issues. We know who the guy is, and we're confident in that guy. And sure enough, George Pickens, like many other people who are very, very successful at their jobs, want to know that the people around them are going to allow them to be that level of successful at their jobs. For me, this is like I said before, playoffs start today. Loser leaves town type match. I think I've not heard anybody today, nationally or otherwise, pick the Lions to win this game. I'm not about to be the first to do so, although I do think it should be a close one and a hard-fought matchup. I just think what Dallas is doing offensively, plus the in-season moves, make this team feel really, really good right now. And especially as they are turning the corner, and Sean Merriman just said it, this is when you really start playing your best ball. This is a loser-leaves-town match again, but I think it's mainly because the three teams ahead of them, the Bears, Packers for the Lions, and then the Eagles for the Cowboys. Yeah. I think that the Eagles of those three, the Eagles are the only one that have a real chance of falling apart.
Well, the Bears too, in that they got a tough road. They play the Lions, the Packers twice. Who else? I had to pull it up. But they got a tough road ahead. I think it's one more tough one as well. Maybe it's the 49ers. But they've got a tough
even still,
go
even if they go 500, they'll still be ahead of the Lions for wild card. They'll be ahead of these other teams for wild card.
You talk about another playoff game. That last game between the Bears and the Lions could be huge too. I'll add some extra motivation. Dallas Cowboys lost their fallen teammate Marshawn Nealon, who passed away last month. That could add some extra motivation too. And I find it funny. George Pickens is balling, which we already knew he was talented. But to your point, I read that same article, and they're talking about the stability with Dak. And it's funny what is okayed when either you're playing well or we are playing well. What I mean by that is, if you read into that,
I know exactly where you're going.
One of the issues that he had in Dallas was, man, he just shows up late. He's not always, necessarily paying attention. With Pittsburgh. Well, if you read, same things happened in Dallas. They've been finding him and everything. They had to find him. That's how late he's been. But dang it, when you're balling and we winning and we see that you're a key cog in this thing and we got a shot to turn this season around, it's a little bit different, right? Well, he's just a little late, a little tardiness. Ain't never did nothing to nobody,
I don't think it's that different. I think the difference is what is valued in different places, right? So, I'll equate this to a language that we both speak and nobody else does. So I'm sorry, Inside Radio. But no, in TV, right?
Yeah.
You might have a great producer who simply can't spell, right?
Oh, man, come on,
right.
Bro. Wow.
So,
but
I was saying, all types of great ideas, somebody that can sit there and fill your rundown out. They will have you with the highest rated opening segment every single day as long as you listen to them. But you do not let them write a single thing that goes on to TV because they're going to spell 2 with 3 O's, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you just don't do it because they can't spell. They can't. The typos don't work for them. They don't see it. Autocorrect is a fail. Do you fire that guy or girl, or do you put that guy or girl in a position where they can do what they're best at and minimize the things that they're going to struggle with? I'm not saying that they never have to write anything. I'm just saying that somebody else is going to check up on it. So I'm not saying George Pickens is always on time. I'm saying that maybe we give George a 5-minute window. Maybe we give George a 5-minute window.
Yeah.
Maybe that's okay.
But I tell you what, no, that's a great example. And listen, as somebody who reads a teleprompter every single day, brother, trust me, when they start doing certain things, if they don't put the dash in between U.S., they got me talking about us. I'm talking about us. It's supposed to be U.S. I'm like, it's today in the us.
In the U.S.
U.S.
In the Us World Report.
Yes. In the us brand. So trust me, I know all about it. You ain't lying about that. But I still think instead of 6-5-1, if they were 1-5, 1-7 or something like that, or whatever it would be, then or 3-8 or whatever, we'd be sitting here like, man, George, if only he took it serious. If only he was locked in. He's got the talent. So but you're right. They know they're trying to win something. They don't want to waste the window of Dak and CD and all that. So if Brod's gonna miss, they talked about Martin. He might miss a few team buses. Might miss a few team buses.
He might miss a bus or two.
Hey, he's got Uber money.
Right.
He might miss a bus or two. I was cracking up when I read that. But so I see what the Cowboys do. I'll go to the other side of this a little bit with the Lions. The thing that has been a little frustrating watching them, I start to feel like they're they're looking so big picture, they're forgetting the small things. And it's almost like you got to take care of this in order to get to that, right? The way they've handled some games, by they I mean Dan Campbell, but on down, they've handled it like, oh, we're 9-1. Don't worry about that game. And it's like, no, you're creating bad habits that could affect you later, ultimately affect you getting even in the playoffs, but let alone affect you in the playoffs. And we've talked about it. I think even you and I have talked about it. Rob and I have talked about it. Just because you usually do doesn't mean you have to. And their approach to, well, we won't punt here. We won't kick a field goal here. We'll go for it here. Or we'll screw the fact that we're on our own side of the ball. That's just not situational. And that, to me, Martin, has come back to possibly haunt them with a couple of games or a couple of moments here where they could have stolen a game or not given one away if they had played better contextualized football or situational football. And that does worry me, obviously, as a Lions fan, that let's say they sneak in, get in the postseason. Did you learn from San Francisco, or is this whole, this is just what we do, this is just who we are? It's okay to evolve. It's okay to be situational. And that is one of the things that worries me. And I say this last point because I read a whole thing. Dan Campbell still mad about 2 years ago when they lost in Dallas, and the skipper play where he caught the lineman caught the pass, 2-point conversion, should have won the game. Then they did it again. Then they did it again, and they were talking about how that still haunts them. They're still mad about it, but that's who we are, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, man, don't find yourself in another situation, because they had lost this season before that to Dallas in a weird kind of way. They thought they should have had it. I'm like, don't find yourself in a situation against an offensively good team like this where you're giving them extra possessions, you're giving them the ball, where you're leaving points on the field. That will drive me crazy if that is something I find that the Lions are doing today, Martin.
So I would say this: I've decided I'm good with the going for it. There's only been one time, really, in the entirety of the Dan Campbell era that I was like, "Yo, you gotta chill." And that was the Eagles game. There was 16-9. It's like it's a one-score game, dude. Like,
oh yeah,
and you go 0 for 5 on fourth down. Like, you know what I mean? Like all right, we have pushed this to critical mass. But I do not have an issue with the Lions going for it. I game plan wise, game script, I'm good with everything Detroit does. I mean that wholeheartedly. Because I think the bigger issue in Detroit has been the issue the last 2 seasons. They have no depth because they're always hurt. And I get it that people will point and say, everybody gets hurt in football, so on and so forth. I hear you, but also there's got to be something that you're doing fundamentally that is causing all of these cluster injuries, whether it's the way they're working. Something about that has to be fundamentally changed. And I think it's the same thing in San Francisco. I think it's these
Boy, you took the words out my mouth.
These teams that are built on being very physical and all of that, I get it. But I just think it takes you have to scale it back just a bit because you guys got to be ready on Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. And I think has been the biggest issue for the Lions across the board. They win in the playoffs last year if they are not starting 11 new players on defense.
Dude, I had to screen that to Rob Parker every day against Washington. I'm like, dude, he kept blaming Jared Goff. And I said, despite Jared Goff's turnovers, you're right, he was terrible, like 4 or 5 turnovers in that game. They were right there.
Yes.
And I said, if their defense was there and not making Jaden Daniels look like the return of, Joe Montana or something, or Doug Williams in the Super Bowl, if you want to keep it with the, Washington.
With the community.
I'm like, they win that game. And so that was a whole thing was that team's defensively, especially on the injuries on the defensive side of the ball, has cost them so much. And now with Amon-Ra St. Brown, banged up, we'll see what he looks like. And then Laporta out as well. But they're going to have to find a way to push through because let me tell you what, the league ain't nobody feeling sorry for him. But this is going to be an interesting game. Obviously, the Lions favorite 3.5, but to your point, it seems like everybody's siding with the Cowboys. Only thing I'll say about the Cowboys, Martin, or at least another thing, a couple of those games they did pull off, they didn't look great against the Eagles. They had a great, second half. You know what I mean?
Sure.
They weren't rolling like that. So
it was about like 4 minutes into 4 minutes left in the second quarter. Things kind of you can feel it coming a little bit.
Yeah. So there is an element of me that's like, okay, they've looked good offensively. Their defense hasn't been as great as maybe people got excited about because they've made a few plays here or there. And I start to wonder, like, all right, are we hyping them up just a little bit? So if I'm the Lions, I'm saying, man, they ain't that good, but they're going to have to figure out something. I was listening to all the football talking heads talking about the Lions. They're not going to be able to play as much man. They play man defense 70% of the time. And against that receiving core, man, that offense with Dak, you're going to have to mix it up. You're going to have to give him different looks. So Kelvin Shepard, the defensive coordinator for the Lions, this might be his most important, biggest game of the season because they're going to have to give this defense, the Cowboys offense, they're going to have to make them see things differently. Aiden Hutchinson, the guys are going to have to get in there because if you just let Dak sit back with CD on one side and GP on the other, it's going to be a long game for the Lions secondary.
Yeah, it didn't matter what time the bus left. George Pickens will be on time for the game.
He's going to be at the game.
He'll be at the
practice.
Game. He'll be ready.
Practice. We talking about practice. He might not be there.